Okay, picking up with slide number 16. Okay, let's talk about enharmonic equivalence. So, the same black key can be given two different names depending on the way it's notated. Um, for example, let's take this particular key, G sharp or A flat, right? It can be uh, it can be notated two different ways, although it's the same. It's really the same pitch, right? So, for example, let's see here. Remember, the key that I'm playing is, remember the pattern of black keys where we have two and then three and then two, three, and so on. Find three, right? One of the pattern of three. And then play the middle black key. And also, more specifically, find the one that is above middle C and play that. So this particular pitch can be, if I see this on my music, I know, okay, that's a G sharp. However, if I see this, I know that's an A flat, although I still play it in the same exact place, okay? And so, two notes that sound the same, but are notated differently, like I was just demonstrating, are said to be enharmonic equivalents. Okay, and there are many more examples of this. For example, if I take the next black key above what I just played, this one, then I could say this can either be called a B flat or, what would you say? An A sharp, right? Because here's A and here's B. So it could be B flat, or if I'm thinking of it from A, it could be A sharp. All right, we could do that with all the black keys actually. All right, so that's enharmonic equivalence. Let's now talk about writing sharps, flats, and naturals. So, sharps, flats, and naturals are written immediately to the left of the note to which they apply. Not the right, but the left, right? This is sometimes confusing because we say it almost like it's written the other way, right? We might say sharp G based on the way it looks, right? Because if we're looking here and the way we read, at least in English, we have sharp G, right? But really, we're going to say G sharp, and we're going to write it to the left always, whether it's a sharp, flat, or natural. Also, when writing sharps, flats, or naturals, we want to write them on the same line or space, depending on if it's a line note or a space note, as the note itself. So, for example, this is a line note, right? Because it's on a line, it's on the second line. And so I'm going to write my sharp sign on the same line as it, right? And that is to say, we can kind of see the shape of a square in the very middle of my sharp sign. And so my line is going to go right through the middle of that square and my line note. However, if I have a space note like this A flat over here, I'm going to draw either my square or my flat in the same space, right, as the note itself. So a little bit more on that now here. Let's go to slide 18. So on the staff, sharps and naturals, we're not talking about flats here, just sharps and naturals now, cover approximately 3 lines or spaces. So we might think of it like, okay, the one that they are centered on, right? And so first of all, here's a line note, right? We talked about that. And so we're going to cover basically this line and then the one under it and then the one directly above it, right? So yeah, basically here I have the one that's on, and then I have, I guess, you know what, actually this one, I should have a little bit longer here on the bottom to cover up that one too. So we're going to cover basically like 1, 2, 3 lines, right? The one that's on and the one below and the one above. As you can see, like this line here covers all 3 of those. And I guess this looks a little weird because I drew it sort of big. Okay, so that's just for sharps and naturals. Let's now go to our next slide, number 19. Get a little practice in. You can pause this video, go to page 97, write in some sharp signs for the first 4 notes that you can see here, and then write some natural signs for the last 4 notes. Okay, and if you forgot what natural signs look like, you can go a couple pages back and look at 95, and you can see what natural signs look like and how to draw those. All right, so then let's move on to slide number 20. Just a little bit more about writing sharps, flats, and naturals, except this time just flats. So flats cover the line or space above, but not below, right? So for example, here's my flat sign, and in this case it's a space note, so I'm going to put the round part of the flat sign in the same space as the space note, and then the line part of my flat sign is going to come up to about the next line up here. Okay, so they cover the line or space above, but not below. All right, so now you can pause this video again and practice writing some flat signs in front of these notes on page 97. All right, and then after you do that, let's move on to slide number 21. So, a little bit about writing half steps and whole steps. So, you can write, oh, and by the way, if you forgot what half steps are, please go back to the beginning of the chapter and review that. So, you can write half steps as, so there's 2 ways to do it. So the first way is 2 notes of the same name, as in F to F sharp. And we can see an example of this on slide 21, but also in your book on figure 5.18 at the top of page 98. So 2 notes of the same name as in F to F sharp. So here's a half step from F to F sharp, right? You can call that a half step. We can also write half steps as 2 notes with adjacent names. So for example, F to G flat, right? What do we mean by adjacent names? We just mean, okay, we have F, and then what's above F? G, right? If we're doing the alphabet A, B, C, D, F, G. So that would be adjacent. It's whatever's right next to F, right? And then what would be also adjacent to F? It would be E, right? Because that's 1 below F. So when writing half steps, you can write them as 2 notes with adjacent names like F to G flat. Now remember, keep in mind that we're talking about F sharp and G flat are enharmonic equivalents, right? That we talked about earlier. So this is F to F sharp, but it's also F to G flat, right? And they're both half steps. We're just notating them differently. Okay. So then let's move on. Let's talk about writing whole steps. So whole steps, differently than half steps. So whole steps are always written as 2 notes of adjacent names, right? And so let's take the example of how about B to D flat, right? That would not be a correctly written whole step, right? Because B, if we're thinking about the alphabet, B to D is not adjacent, right? B to C would be adjacent because C is right next to B and D is 2 away from B. So B to D flat would not be a correctly written whole step. You would have to write the second note, meaning the D flat, as a C sharp instead. So if we're going to write down a whole step above B, we'd have to say it's B to C sharp, right? Even though B to D flat, it's going to sound the same. We would have to write it as B to C sharp to count it as a whole step. B to D flat, that would be a different interval, which we'll talk about in an upcoming chapter. So that's a little bit about writing half steps and whole steps.